Hello and welcome to Pat's Chat. I am Doug Kyed, joined for the first time, since this is the first episode, by Michael Hurley. Let's kick things off. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We got a podcast.
We have a podcast.
Wow.
We've been wanting to do a podcast for, I don't know, I've probably wanted to do a podcast with you for like 10 years without even telling you. But
yeah, I said, get in line, pal. Get in line.
There's always something in the way, but guess what? There is nothing in the way, at least for me at this point. But we'll be doing this podcast every Monday, every Friday. Great timing here to be starting a podcast in, what is it, week 14 right now?
Yeah, that's when the season starts after Thanksgiving, but not like immediately after Thanksgiving, like a couple weeks after. That's when the season really begins.
It's a famous line by Bill Belichick. The season starts after Thanksgiving, but not right after Thanksgiving, a couple weeks after Thanksgiving.
And not on Thanksgiving night either. That's Thanksgiving.
No, that's Thanksgiving.
That's the neutral zone.
Bill Belichick has also famously said football is a great holiday. So I don't know, maybe today is the football holiday. Who knows? But we're going to talk more about this, like what we're doing, the plan, all that stuff in a couple segments. But let's
wait. No. First, because everyone's wondering it. How did you guys come up with that name, Pat's Chat? Like, what was the inspiration? And I just say, we are pretty incredible at naming. So there you go.
Yeah, it was either this or New England Patriots, and we felt that Pat's Chat was probably a little bit better.
I'll be honest with you, because we should be honest. I will be referring to this as Ideal Pals Law for as long the Ideal Pals Law podcast. So, what you can call it whatever you want. But that's what I choose to call it. We are pals. It's ideal, and that's the law of the land. So it's the Ideal Pals Law.
We'll change the colon to Pat's Chat Ideal Pals Law. But
thank you.
Let's kick it off with the story of the day, so that people don't get tired of us talking about what we're going to do, and we'll talk about what we're actually doing instead.
So good.
Patriots offense. Bill Belichick feels good about it, he said today. I think that was on
yesterday.
Thursday. We're recording this on Thursday. He said it yesterday on Wednesday. Wouldn't get into too many details about why he feels good about the Patriots offense, which I can understand. The Patriots offense has been bad so far this season. But I guess just what do you make of Bill Belichick's optimism right now? Because it doesn't, and I guess we don't necessarily know, based on the 20-year dynasty the Patriots had, of what Bill Belichick's messaging really is when things go bad and when he doesn't believe in them. So I guess, is this a tell into how Bill Belichick handles these types of things at this point?
Well, I think that's a good point by you, and I'll get to that in 1 second. But to me, it's like when he said that, you go back to August and April, when people were like, are you really going to go into the season with Matt Patricia running your offense? And he just, if it doesn't work, blame me. And that was his line over and over. If it doesn't work, it's ultimately falls at my feet. Okay, well, here we are. It's middle of December. It's not working. What do I like? Is there a blame line? What good will it do to go to Bill and be like, you're blamed? The point is, they shouldn't be in this position. We all knew it in April, in May and June and July and August and through September and October. There really hasn't even been. There was maybe that moment, remember, in the middle of the season where it was Tom Curran, because Tom has a rapport, I would say, negative with Matt Patricia in some way. And he asked him if he wants to take a victory lap. So I don't remember. That was probably after, they won a couple games with Bailey Zappi. They beat up on the Lions, where things were kind of going okay. But there was never a point where we were wrong about this. And it's just gotten worse. Even the Minnesota game had spurts, but the fourth quarter, they go 3 and out 3 times and then turn it over on downs one of the times. It has never been like a high functioning NFL offense. So it's a long way to answer. Okay, it's not working. We blame you. Why is there not a change? And I'll wrap up this long thought quickly. Earlier in the week, when he was asked on the radio, why not are you going to make a change now? And he just said, it's too hard. And to me, when did it's too hard become a Foxborough mantra? It's always, you do what's best for the team. And it's too hard. I get that there's complexities, but teams fire their offensive coordinator all the friggin' time. Frank Reich called the plays in Indy and fired his offensive coordinator. So these things happen. So the whole situation is a bit befuddling this week, I would say.
Yeah, it's too hard. And essentially that equates to it's too late at this point. I mean, I think there was a time, like even when they were beating up on the Jets and the Colts, like it's not like the offense was a high functioning, high powering unit. And I know it's tough to like make a change in offensive coordinator or play caller or even quarterback. I'm not saying that that's an option right now when you're winning, but I do think that after two straight losses now, you at least have to think about it, and you can't just say it's too hard. I mean, like you said, teams do this all the time. I don't think it's actually benefited the Colts very much to switch their quarterback twice, fire their head coach, fire their offensive coordinator. I know that Jim Irsay is at least trying to make moves. I'm not sure if that's even appeasing the fan base, so I'm not sure if that would be what would happen for the Patriots. But yeah, I mean, I do think that Patriots fans would probably appreciate something. And to your point, like when Bill Belichick says, if it doesn't work, blame me. Yeah, who's supposed to do that? Like, is the media supposed to go up to him one by one and be like, Bill, it's time. We're blaming you. Or is it like the players? Is it Robert Kraft? Because I know that Tom Curran has talked a couple times this week about like, is Bill Belichick untouchable at this point? I think we're not still at that point in the conversation yet, but I don't know. I mean, I think that there was a glimmer of hope in the Vikings game, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also, I was almost ready to say like, hey, hands up. I was wrong when Bailey Zappi looked like a decent quarterback in the Patriots offense. I don't think I ever quite reached that level, but now that we've seen week after week and after week after week of the Patriots offense struggling, I don't know. I mean, I don't care one way or the other, but I do think the Patriots fans probably would like to see at least like something done now that there's a final stretch of the season and the Patriots are still in playoff contention.
Yeah. Well, we can introduce a new segment called Mike's Big Dumb Brain. And tell me if I'm big and dumb, because sometimes I think I'm right with it. And it's that you mentioned Bailey Zappi looking really well, the offense running a little bit more efficiently. I think when you have a play caller who's never done it before, running an offense he's never done it before, having a rookie who's never done anything before makes it easier for the coaching staff. Where it's simple. Usually it's like, all right, Brady's out, Jacoby Brissett is in. We've really got to simplify this game plan and simplify it and shorten the playbook and rip 50 pages out. I think if they're doing that, if Matt Patricia is doing that, I think it benefits him. And I think that's led to Zappi looking better because there's a simpler offense, but the Pat's Chat podcast, but the overall offense is more limited that way. And that's how I always felt about that. But on the Belichick thing, you said we don't have a lot of, history of things not going well. I'm starting to get the 2020 feel from Bill Belichick. You might remember you were still on the beat in 2020. December, the season was over at Thanksgiving. They beat the Chargers on Sunday Night Football, and there was hope. And then they got absolutely destroyed by the Rams on Thursday Night Football, and that was it. That was like early December, I want to say. And Bill Belichick just got very nice. And I'm not one that's like, I don't know, people make too much of when he's like in a bad mood or grumpy or short, or terse, like, what it is. Like, it's not a big deal. But I noticed that there was more, there was longer answers, more thorough answers. There was the friggin' apology, Doug. You might remember we got the fellas the next day, like, fellas, I'm sorry. I didn't even think the night before was like out of the ordinary. It was. So I think you're starting to get that. If you look at the press conferences this week, very long, detailed answers, even questions that were kind of prickly about the play caller, about changing schemes. Phil Perry asked, in 2018, you completely changed things in December and went into a running. You went all running. Josh said, and he's like, well, yeah, we do that all the time. And then you get the whole long list, how they changed Lawrence Taylor in 86 and 90, obviously. We had to get that in, but
obviously
I'm starting to get that long, polite answers because things aren't going well. And, we'll get into this game. Like if this game doesn't go well, they do have that week out West where maybe it's a little bit less needly, but the questions in the heat, and we say heat differently with Belichick than we do with like Nathaniel Hackett. But heat is heat. Fans are mad. You remember a couple years ago when that nothing question after they lost to the Titans in the playoffs, like the fans have supported you through ups and downs. And like, well, I don't think there's been many downs. So we're 3 years removed from that now. So I don't think you'll get those kind of answers. And I think that's something to kind of explain the comments you might see this week?
I think there is a little bit of transparency when Bill Belichick does start to be, a little bit more vocal with his answers. And we actually saw it, I feel like, even early this season as well, when they might have been, laboring out of the gate. Then they went on a little bit of the hot streak with Bailey Zappi at quarterback and the win streak against, teams like the Jets and the Colts and the Lions and stuff. And then he started to become more like himself. And I do think that when there are struggles, yes, he does turn into a little bit of a nicer Bill Belichick. I was planning on this segment being a little bit later in the podcast, but let's just get it out of the way right now. And that's the funniest thing that happened this week.
Okay.
And my opinion on this is an answer from Cardinals defensive coordinator Vance Joseph about the Patriots offense. I'm just going to play the clip real quick.
I see an offense that's running the football well. It's a very conservative pass game. Lots of screens, all kind of screens. It's like a defensive guy's calling offense. It's how a defensive guy will call offensive plays, right? Let's not turn the ball over. Let's get 4 yards of play and try to burn clock, and that's what they're doing. That's what he's going to do on Monday night. He's going to be patient. Maybe take a shot here, from time to time, but for the most part, it's running game, it's quick game, and it's screens. So.
So that's Vance Joseph's take on the Patriots offense. And I mean, yeah, it's like 100% correct that it looks like a defensive guy calling offensive plays. But I mean, I don't think those words have ever been spoken during a NFL press conference in the history of football, because like this itself is so rare it's in itself. And then for Vance Joseph just to be like, yeah, they're super conservative. All they do is run the ball and throw short passes. It's like a defensive play caller calling offensive plays. It's like, yeah, Vance. Yeah, it is. And I really didn't get that much of a chance to like discuss last week's game against the Bills. I know that we're way past that at this point, but that final drive when they had, what was it, like 6 minutes, something like that, to start the drive. And they were still down by 3 scores or 2 scores, whatever it was at that point. And they're just throwing like 2-yard passes down the field the entire time. They take 3 deep shots. All of them are incomplete, but otherwise they're just like draining the clock down with these short passes. And clearly that's all they can really do, or that's all that they're willing to do. But at the same time, yeah, I don't know. It's like a defensive coach calling offensive plays.
And you saw it 3rd and 7 early to Jacoby Myers. He runs a 5-yard out,
right?
Incomplete. And then the 3rd and 15, when they go for 7, you think, all right, well, you're cutting half of it down and going for it. No, you're punting. And so the conservative play, a part of that is definitely play calling. I mean, if I see Matt Patricia run a play where they fake a screen pass to nobody to the right side and then throw a screen pass to the left where a running back is set up with blockers, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, that's not even a defensive. I don't know what that is, but it's funny because on paper, like I saw the tweet come out before the video. And it's like, whoa, we got some trash talk. But then you watch, it's like, no, matter-of-factly,
being very kind,
factually speaking, this is what it looks like when a defensive coordinator is calling offensive plays. And it's true. I mean, the I guess boring, less exciting part is that like the offensive line is terrible. Like it's between performance and injuries. Right. You can't have a deep passing game with that. I think you saw that like Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time. He couldn't pass against the Saints until, the last 5 minutes when everything went haywire. But no quarterback, I still contend no quarterback could succeed this year in this Patriots offense. So for as much as it's like, oh, they should try more, I don't know that they can, because Mac is getting killed in 3 seconds or less. 70% of his dropbacks. I don't have the number, but it's sort of a chicken or the egg type thing, where you kind of have to just throw to Ramondre Stevenson every play. And you not to go too far ahead of this week, but if Myers isn't on the field, trouble.
The issue there of saying like, oh, it's not the play calling, it's actually the offensive line that's the problem. The stem is still one person. And
who's the offensive line coach?
It's the offensive play caller. Unfortunately, it's Matt Patricia.
Same guy.
Same guy. Yep.
Who can I blame for this? Like, I would like to blame a man. I would like to blame one man for this setup.
Yeah, and I mean, like going back to it, I don't want this to be the hey everyone crap on Matt Patricia podcast, because I think that everyone kind of already does that. I don't want to, get into that too deeply, but I think, Bill Belichick had the option over the offseason of keeping Carmen Priscillo as the offensive line coach. He still had 1 year left on his contract. He allowed him to go to the Las Vegas Raiders. And, things record-wise aren't better for the Las Vegas Raiders this season, but they have been much more efficient on offense than the Patriots have been this season. But I still think you could have kept Carmen Priscillo as the offensive line coach, even if you wanted Matt Patricia to come in and be the offensive play caller. I guess that the issue there at that point would be, what would you title Matt Patricia? Because I don't think that they wanted to give him the offensive coordinator title, either because of money or because Bill Belichick wanted to take the blame for when things went wrong. You didn't want to blame Matt Patricia. So I guess you had to give him a title, and it would be tough to say all right, our assistant offensive line coach is calling offensive plays, or I don't even know what else he would have been, like a running backs coach. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that out of every offensive position, he's probably best at coaching the offensive line, but that doesn't mean that he should be doing both jobs at once and trying to figure it all out, because I don't know. I know that there's a subset of fans or analysts or whoever it is that doesn't want to blame the coaching for the Patriots' offensive issues so far this season. But anything that you can blame, whether that's execution, whether that's mistakes, whether that's penalties, whether that's offensive line play, whether that's Mac Jones issues, these guys didn't just get worse over the offseason. This was a good offense last year. This was a top 10 offense in EPA per play, which is now a bottom 10 offense in EPA per play. And beyond Ted Karras leaving, I love Ted Karras, but I don't think that Ted Karras alone is the cause for all of the Patriots' issues so far this season.
No, and I didn't want to do an offensive line podcast, but I think it's so important. Andrews, I think, has been his normal self. I haven't seen a drop off from him. Right. He's a professional. When he's been out, though, James Ferentz, it's the same thing with Matt Patricia. I'm not going to dump on James Ferentz for not being very good. He's a backup center. And when you have a backup center, you get backup center play. I think that's similar to the offensive coaching staff. You have a rookie at left guard who needs coaching. Trent Brown has never looked worse in his career, despite he's had some downs in his career. Never like this. Isaiah Wynn has never looked this bad in his career. And it's not just they're not being coached. I think Michael Onwenu's been fine too.
Right. He's been good.
But you're looking at a situation where Trent Brown is still sick a week later. Wynn is still out with the foot. Just has his calf and back hurt. And last week during warmups, they had James Ferentz, if I'm not mistaken, taking warmups at tackle.
I really want to see that in a game.
He's 6'3", I think.
Oh, no, that was James Ferentz is listening to this podcast being like, hell yeah, I'm 6'3". Yeah. I'm psyched that Mike Hurley just said I'm 6'3". James Ferentz is 6'1" on a good day, I think.
Yeah. So there, I mean, you can't deny the injuries, obviously, but when they've been out there, they've been bad. And to me, it's not just Patricia can't coach offensive line. Right. I know that when this particular team, and this isn't the only way to do it, but when this particular team was humming and they were winning 12 games and they had the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offense in the league, every single drive, the 7 offensive linemen were on the bench, and their offensive line coach, who was very good at his job, was on his knee talking to them, even if it's simple reminders of, we got to do X and Y, not even a third Z, just do this, focus on this. You go over what you messed up, you go over what you're seeing, and you get better throughout the game. This year, and again, it's not a dump on Matty P podcast, because I don't want to be a personal thing, but in a Zoom press conference, he was asked what the communication is like, and he explained to us every detail of how headsets work and how they can be used to communicate with people in other rooms, the same way my children use walkie-talkies and think it's amazing. And it was we know that there's headsets, but are you coaching them? And they're just not getting it. And, Billy Yates, for whatever he can do, is going to be doing that. But it's sort of one large problem in the, larger issue, I guess. But I just think it's the nucleus of it is that offensive line. So it goes into the play calling. And then, you talk about, the glimmers of hope in Minnesota. Still red zone was a problem. Still third down was a problem. And it's those got to have it plays, winning time, whatever you want to call it. They are getting out executed across the board. And you heard from Kendrick Bourne last week or Thursday night, just air it out. We're playing in the defense's hands. it's because you have a guy who's never done it before. Doing it in this stage in this spotlight, you're not doing it for the Jaguars or the Texans. It's going to have a microscope on you, and when it doesn't go well, it's going to get ugly. So, Doug, they go in Monday night on the road. I don't know that it's the toughest road environment in the world, but it's still the road. It's still Monday Night Football. You're going to have, you have a decent pass rush going against you. The secondary is terrible. There should be opportunities just on paper, but I'm telling you, I have serious concerns that it actually materializes into a Vikings type night because of how that offensive line looks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we'll get into that game in a second. One final thing I will say about the offense and the offensive line before we get into the game against the Cardinals is that I still don't totally understand why the Patriots switched Isaiah Wynn from left tackle to right tackle and Trent Brown from left tackle to right tackle. Because Isaiah
from left to right, but then back to left because he needed to go back to left after Wynn was bad at left.
Right.
Or Wynn got hurt. I forget the exact timeline.
Right. Well, no, it was yes. Well, still, just begin the season, they switched Trent Brown from right tackle to left tackle, and Isaiah Wynn from left tackle to right tackle. And last year, the offensive line was fine with Isaiah Wynn, left tackle, Trent Brown at right tackle. There was some injuries, whatever. Like, I don't know, because a lot of the theorizing was that it was due to outside zone concepts and that you didn't want Trent Brown next to Michael Onwenu because those are two very large individuals who don't move as well as other offensive linemen. And you didn't want Isaiah Wynn and Cole Strange next to each other because those are both, undersized, athletic offensive linemen. You wanted to split those guys up, have a big guy and a small guy, big guy and a small guy.
And you didn't want Shaq Mason in the state. You didn't want him
right
in the conference.
Of course, you had to trade Shaq Mason. But once they kind of started ditching a lot of the outside zone concepts, and once they had a bye week, and once the offensive line wasn't gelling together, I was really surprised that they just didn't say like, all right, that didn't work that well. The offensive line is worse than it's ever been during the Bill Belichick era. Let's flip the guys again. Instead, they just benched Trent Brown until Isaiah Wynn got hurt. And now we're where they're at. All right. So let's talk about the latest news. And there's not a lot of news this week. It's been a very long week since the Bills game, but there's some sort of illness that's going through the Patriots locker room. And on Thursday in practice, the reporters there did not see wide receiver Jacoby Myers, defensive back Jalen Mills, running back Damian Harris, offensive tackle Trent Brown, offensive tackle Isaiah Wynn, and third string quarterback Garrett Gilbert. For Trent Brown, so he had an illness heading into last week's game. He also had an illness at times before the week prior, I think, when he did get benched. I think he was dealing with an illness at that point as well. It's a long lingering illness at this point for Trent Brown. Hopefully he's okay, but definitely not great with all the offensive line issues that we've already been talking about with Trent Brown and Isaiah Wynn both not practicing, and the fact that in 2 days they have to get on a plane and fly across country to Arizona, where they will then be staying out on the West Coast for an entire week. So if guys are sick right now, like we might see all 70 coaches, players, everything get sick before the Raiders game.
Well, you might remember when they were in Vegas for a week this summer, Trent Brown tweeted out ready to go home. So I can't imagine he's excited after a week-long illness, whatever that might be. The illness must be one hell of an illness because he didn't take warm-ups last week, which led to the Ferentz warm-up. Bill Belichick was asked about that, I think, the day after the game and said something like, once he was active, they knew he was going to play. So I don't recall seeing an illness keep a player out of warm-ups and just come out for the game. But either way, it must be one heck of an illness. I have to assume he'll be healthy by Monday or healthy enough, but I don't know what kind of condition he'll be in after a week with, who knows what kind of illness it is. But you look at the line obviously stands out there, but to me, the fact that it snuck in there at the end of that Bills game because it was a blowout, but a Bills safety just deciding to try to decapitate Jacoby Myers in a 14-point game with 3 minutes left was it could end the Patriots season. Not to put too fine of a point on it, but if you don't have that guy out there on Monday, it changes the whole offense. He is your most reliable route runner, your most reliable third down guy, your he is kind of your offense. And granted, you could point at the Minnesota game, which he missed most of after getting hurt in the first drive, and say, hey, dummy, look at this. And then he came back and their offense stalled. So maybe I'm overstating it, but I just think the way concussions are since Tua's injury, it's sort of, we're back to the 2010s, which we maybe at the end of turned back into the 90s. But now they actually are forced to take them seriously, thankfully. But I think his absence to me stands out as much as any, because it's like everyone wants that offense to go. The Cardinals' pass defense is vulnerable and can be attacked. But if you're not at full power, it's just, he's so important. And I think he's their one real guy that works for 30 teams, like he's the one guy, maybe born to, but on the outside receivers position,
it's weird though this season, because heading into the year, I was like, all right, like all the wide receivers are starting caliber wide receivers. None of them are, the number ones that people want to talk about, but they're all sort of the same. Like even last year, Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne put up very similar numbers in the Patriots offense. Nelson Aguilar, has been a near 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL. Same thing goes with Devontae Parker. In a vacuum, all of these guys should basically be as good as one another. But you're absolutely right. When Jacoby Myers is out of the offense, it's extremely evident. And Mac Jones, for one reason or another, has just not been able to get the ball to any other wide receiver in this offense. And that includes Tyquan Thornton as well. And I guess to some degree, it does make sense with Aguilar and Thornton, because those are both speedy guys. You have to have time to get downfield, so you can understand why there's not a lot of deep passes being thrown their way. Same thing kind of goes for Devontae Parker, because he's not the fastest wide receiver, but he's a contested catch guy. You want to throw it to him downfield. And they've had relative success with that sometimes downfield. But yeah, for Kendrick Bourne, it's just weird that Kendrick Bourne hasn't had more success this season. And some of that is playtime. I'm not sure if after last week's comments, you'll be getting more playtime this week, though I will say that I feel bad for Kendrick Bourne, because after last week's game, all anyone wanted to talk about was Kendrick Bourne's comments about the Patriots scheme and how on third down, they're not scheming up correctly to beat the opposing defense. Kendrick Bourne was sort of hung out to dry after that game to talk for 15 minutes. He talked to Mark Daniels of Mass Live for 3 minutes. He talked to me for 3 minutes, and then he talked to the scrum for over 9 minutes. And he had a lot of thoughts. He said a lot more than just what he said about the scheme, but all anyone wants to talk about and all anyone wants to point to is the scheme. But I would say the general vibe of Kendrick Bourne after that game was people being like, Kendrick, what the hell is wrong with this offense? And him being like, I don't know, man. I'm trying to figure it out too. And they was just kind of throwing out theories, I think, to some degree. And clearly as a player in the Patriots scheme and offense and this, this regime, you can't do that. So I can understand why those comments blew up more than others. But I will say that that was a bad 20 seconds from him on a 15-minute long scrum, essentially.
But it was kind of taken in tandem with what Max said at the podium, which, maybe wouldn't have come up if he wasn't shown on the broadcast, yelling, throw the effing ball. But when he said we need to throw deeper more, I think it kind of worked in tandem. I wanted to open this while you're talking about it. It was going to be loud. So it's time to get to our sponsor, Polar Seltzer.
Nice.
If they're watching, the podcast is brought to you by Polar Seltzer at all times. Not to completely shift the subject, but just to stay on the news of the injuries, I think Jalen Mills is sneaky a big one too, because I know Patriots fans aren't like, Jalen Mills, he's our man. But secondary has been having some issues with some top flight wide receivers. Justin Jefferson had what? I just had brought it up here. Justin Jefferson had 9 catches for 139 yards and a touchdown. He also threw a pass. And then followed up by Stephon Diggs he only had 7 for 92 and a touchdown, but A, he also had a 41-yard touchdown come back on the hold. And B, the Bills they were at 75% trying, effort. Not saying they weren't trying on the snap, but strategy-wise. I liken that game to the big brother putting his hand on his little brother's forehead and the little brother just, trying his best to punch him, but can't reach him. So Diggs could have had 10 for 150 if that was the game plan. And now you're going in, not only is DeAndre Hopkins there, but Marquise Brown is back.
Right.
And you're going to go in with I think it's sort of like Ferentz, like Jonathan Jones. I'm not going to be like, oh man, he got torched by Justin Jefferson, because like, who can cover Justin Jefferson?
I know,
but you definitely can't when your number one corner isn't really the number one corner, and that goes back to the summer. Bill, do you need a number one cornerback? And he's like, no, not really. It's like, well, all right, let's run it through. In 01 and 03, you had Ty Law. 04, I'll grant you. I think it was like Asante Samuel. And, you had that Tyrone Poole was on the field a lot.
Yeah,
I'll grant you 04 kind of, because Ty Law got hurt. 14, you had Revis. 16, you had Butler. And 18, you had, Stephon Gilmore, the defensive player of the year, the following year. So to say like you don't need one, I'd argue you do, and you don't have one. Mills is probably, on a level with Jonathan Jones. I think Jonathan Jones is a heck of a player, cast over his skis or whatever you want to call it. But to not have Mills out there brings it down. And then you have two rookies in the secondary. Not that I'm saying Kyler Murray is going to go out there and carve you up, but when it comes to a 60-yard game-changing play, and Hopkins is, deep over the middle, he's kind of always open anyway. Being shorthanded in the secondary could be bad. So if Mills doesn't come back by Saturday's practice, that's more trouble. I'm like doomsday. I turned into doomsday this week.
I mean, this is one of those years where usually I feel like Bill Belichick would have gone out of his way to get a number one cornerback, or like that elite level cornerback. And, it probably wasn't available to them. I guess they could have re-signed Stephon Gilmore if he had been interested, but maybe they thought that, that time had passed. But on a schedule where to finish off the season, you have Justin Jefferson, then Stephon Diggs, then DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown, then Devontae Adams, then Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, then Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And then Stephon Diggs. This is like the worst possible stretch of wide receivers to go up against. And in some of those games, when you're going up against two number one caliber wide receivers like you have, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle,
I think Hunter Renfrow might be back for that game too.
I was actually just going to say that too. Yeah, Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller could be back for the Raiders as well. I felt bad for Jonathan Jones in that game against Stephon Diggs, because he got kind of torched by him, but Stephon Diggs torches everyone that's not an elite level cornerback. And as good as Jonathan Jones is, he's just not going to hang with Devontae Adams. He's not going to hang with Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson, because there's only like 4 cornerbacks in the world that can. But as you mentioned, in the early 2000s and in 2014 and in 2018 and to some degree in 2016, they did have one of those best cornerbacks in the world in their defense. I'd also throw out there that in 2016, even when it was Malcolm Butler, who probably isn't on the same level as a Ty Law, Darrelle Revis, or Stephon Gilmore, they had a very good number 2 cornerback in Logan Ryan, who like 7 years later is still in the league with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So like it went beyond just having Malcolm Butler in that defense that year. They had a good secondary overall. So yeah, let's get into this Cardinals game real quick here.
Well, first you should find Jonathan Jones and pull a Goodwill Hunting. Like, it's not your fault.
It's
not your fault. But I mean, but to your point, like, it's not really about him necessarily.
Right.
Those guys are going to get theirs. It's just, I think, as your depth is not really something that can be messed with. And so when Jalen Mills goes out, it disrupts a whole lot of things and puts people, I mean, that's why you lost Super Bowl 52. We're doing Patriots Super Bowl history podcast. You lost because Malcolm Butler was obviously sidelined. I don't know if you caught that story, didn't play in the game. And then you had everyone playing out of position. It like moved Chung out of his normal role. It put obviously people like Jordan Richards and Johnson Vadamosi into the game, and it threw everyone's slotting off, for lack of a better term. So if Mills is out again, it's just, I don't want to overstate it, but Cliff Kingsbury is an offensive coach. Kyler Murray is certainly capable of doing things at times. It's a recipe for trouble.
It is, but let's get into the game. Cardinals have not been very good so far this season. So I was looking it up. Cardinals overall on offense this season are 24th in EPA per play. That's expected points added per play. 22nd in EPA per passing play, and 21st in EPA per running play. I don't think that's necessarily the results that you want when you do have an offensive-minded head coach. that you wanted to pair with your quarterback who signed a massive contract this offseason. And you've got DeAndre Hopkins, you've got Hollywood Brown back in the offense now. And then on defense, they're 20th in EPA per play against, 21st in EPA per pass play against, and 17th in EPA per rush play against. I'll just run through the metrics real quick with the Patriots as well. 27th on offense in EPA per play, 25th per pass play, 22nd per run play. And on defense, 3rd in EPA per play against, 4th against the pass, and 8th against the run. The Cardinals are not very good. And I do think that there's a possibility that this could actually be the game against the Vikings that goes better. Because I think that the Vikings are they're actually pretty similar, like as a team that does not excel in any one thing, that's kind of middle of the road all across the board. These two teams are like kind of similar, but Kevin O'Connell is just a better coach than Cliff Kingsbury. He knows how to run that offense. He knows to be conservative with Kirk Cousins. He knows to go through Justin Jefferson. With the Cardinals, like they're just, I don't think they really necessarily still know how to run that offense. It's just kind of havoc filled and everyone's always yelling at each other on the sideline, and it's just not a very well-run team. So there is an aspect of this where I actually think it's possible that this could wind up being a get-right game for the Patriots. At the same time, they've only ever really had success this season against a team that is absolutely horrible on offense or absolutely horrible on defense, and the Cardinals are not that. They're at least fine on both sides of the ball.
More offense than defense, maybe even if the stats don't show it. There just seems to be a little bit more vulnerability there. But to your point, like if you just look at it from wins and losses, the teams that Arizona has beaten, they beat the Raiders in overtime, they beat the Panthers, they beat the Saints, and they beat the Rams. I don't know if that was a Wofford game or like a half Wofford game, but the point is those are their only 4 wins. Right. It's the second lowest strength. I'm a big strength of victory guy. It's the second lowest strength of victory in the league. So if you're decent, they're not beating you. I just think the mitigating factors with the injuries and the fact that the Cardinals are coming off a bye week. So if ever they had an offensive game plan that worked, perhaps this would be it. But have you watched Hard Knocks?
No, I have. Have you watched Hard Knocks?
Has anyone watched it? So I was like, you know what, Michael, like be a professional, do some research, like do some background homework. Like there are some weeks I know more about the opponent than others. I said, this could be one of those weeks. And I watched an episode and I was like, it's like unwatchable. Like it really used to be such a must-watch show. I don't know if they're just sanitizing it so much. I did watch last year's with the Colts. It was kind of interesting mid-season, but the point is that my takeaway from one episode, I probably won't watch the other 3, is like you mentioned, like everyone's yelling at each other. No one really knows what they're doing. I don't believe Kyler is that guy. Like, and that's not athletically or performance-wise. Just like I don't know that he's a leader of that team.
You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Exactly. That guy needs to go out there and just speak to the team at a team meeting. I don't think Cliff is that guy. They spent like 10 minutes and he's just giving a tour of his house. And he's like, yeah, this is a big painting of a lion. I'm a Leo. So it's just a lot of symbolism there. And it's like, is it
really
Cliff?
Only one symbol there?
Yeah, it's just a Leo. It's just a lion for Leo, really. But my takeaway was kind of just an uninspired. Buda Baker is a hell of a player, an interesting human being. Oh yeah, how about that?
DBU.
There you go. Didn't know that. Maybe I did and forgot it because it's not important to me, but it is important to you, and so I will learn that. But I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, the Patriots are going to get blown out. I just think if they can't protect and the offense doesn't flow, it could be a bit tougher than I think we might have expected in August and September and October, and even as recently as a few weeks ago, because the Patriots should win this game. Like if the Patriots are that slightly better than mediocre, good enough to either be in the playoffs or stay in the playoff race until week 18, they have to win this game. Otherwise, you're not that guy, pal.
Yeah, the hope I think for the Patriots at this point, obviously, is that they can win this game against the Cardinals, because I do think it's still a winnable game. Then they can stay out west and rally together and everything and beat the Raiders. But then, I mean, good Lord, the schedule there at the end of the season, even if they're 8-6 after these next 2 weeks, against the Bengals at home, the Dolphins at home.
No, I got you.
The Bills in Buffalo.
Ready? I got it all done. Ready? So you win both. You win both,
Yep.
Eric. So you're 8-6. Bengals have to come here on Christmas. The Bengals have been kind of up and down.
They have.
Some
Got
weeks
blown
they've
up by
looked
the
terrible.
Browns.
Yeah, they're not fully, weekend. They're not the Chiefs just yet, though they beat the Chiefs, obviously. But they got to come here on Christmas Eve. They're going to be a little out of it. You win that game, easy. Next week, Miami in Foxborough. It'll be 17 degrees, rainy, snowy, whatever. Easy win. Week 18
probably won't be rainy if it's 17 degrees. Just to be fair.
Shut up. Week 18. You got to go to Buffalo, which could be hard. But let's say the Chiefs or the Bills have their slot decided. And maybe the Bills need to play in Wild Card Weekend, and so why are they going to play all out when they have a big playoff game to host the next week? You win that game easy again against the backups, and then that makes you 11-6 championship.
Wow,
we just did it.
Path. That's the path to the playoffs. Patriots are currently in 8th place in the AFC, and I mean, there's
I was mostly joking, but
fetched about that, but.
Well, the whole thing, there are winnable possibilities.
There's winnable elements to everything. So one aspect of this game, well, first of all, Hard Knocks in season. Hard Knocks works because everyone wants to tweet about it when nothing else is going on in football. Hard Knocks in season, no one wants to talk about. Yeah, you don't want it. There's no cuts. Well, they didn't even show the cut, right? When Benjamin got cut, they didn't even show it.
Oh, right.
And then when the offensive line
coach
gets fired, they don't show that either. Apparently, I haven't watched, but this is what I've
think. Yeah, it's too. I mean, the formula for the summer is like you fall in love with the 79th player on the roster and hope he makes it, and he never does. Like shocker. So it's definitely missing that element. But like last year, the Colts were in the playoff chase, so it was kind of fun to watch that. But this is not that.
For this game, Cliff Kingsbury said that he is hopeful that Rondale Moore, their wide receiver, is going to play. We're still at the point now when DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, and Rondale Moore have not been on the field altogether. I will say that despite the fact that Cliff Kingsbury is hopeful that Rondale Moore is going to play, Cliff Kingsbury is kind of a liar when it comes to injuries. And Cliff Kingsbury, I've said this on another podcast that I used to do. Cliff Kingsbury has said now 2 seasons in a row, that Kyler Murray is going to be a game time decision when Kyler Murray is not going to play for another 2 or 3 weeks. So logically, I will say that if Kyler Murray doesn't play 1 week, then he doesn't play another week, and then he finally plays the 3rd week. In the 1st week, he probably wasn't a game time decision.
It's probably true.
And Cliff Kingsbury only really gets away with this, with just kind of straight up lying about things, because there's a small media contingency in Arizona, because their press conferences are 4:30 p.m. when no one wants to be listening to them anymore. So we'll see if Rondale Moore plays, but I think he didn't practice today, maybe yesterday as well. And despite the fact that they're hopeful, I don't know. We'll see about that. We're going to talk. Let's talk about real quick.
Wait, one more thing on that, on the injury possibility with Damian Harris likely out for the Patriots.
Right.
You had Ramondre Stevenson take 53 out of 54 offensive snaps last game, which I think he's maybe okay with, but I don't know that that's sustainable. And when you run a guy like that every play, and not only is he out there, but he's getting the ball 35% of the time, it's not good. So behind him, they have Kevin Harris, Pierre Strong, and JJ Taylor. I tallied up this week the total output, and including Ty Montgomery before he got hurt. Running backs not named Ramondre or Damian.
Oh, no.
17 carries for 16 yards this season. 4 receptions, 23 yards, touchdown, which we know is Ty Montgomery. So 17 carries, 16 yards. And you saw it last week. Kevin Harris got a handoff.
Oh, my God.
He kind of juked or made a cut into a defender, lost a yard, and didn't play for the rest of the night. I did ask Bill about that the other day. How are these guys doing? Because they've taken 20 snaps total and they're not getting the ball. And he's like, oh, normal progression. So I don't know. Let's say Ramondre goes out there and takes a helmet to the quad or something and needs to jog to the sideline. Yeah, I talk about Myers being out. Maybe we're missing the big issue is if the Patriots can't run the ball and can't pass block and have JJ Taylor out there in pass protection, could be another thing to watch for. So I think if you're the Patriots, you have to pray Ramondre Stevenson stays untouched, which is unlikely when he takes 100% of the snaps.
So since week 9, the Patriots are 30th in EPA per rush. which is very bad when you consider how good they were to start the season.
And just this talent on the offensive line. Like they should be better than that.
Right. But I mean, I do think that a lot of that is that typically the Patriots like to have that depth at running back, and they like to have Brandon Bolden. They like to have, that third guy who's a vet, like the years when they had Mike Gillislee and Rex Burkhead and Sony Michel and they were like all these guys to go into this season with Pierre Strong potentially playing such a heavy role and Kevin Harris and JJ, like it was very un-Patriots. Like it's another thing, kind of like the cornerback situation and kind of like the offensive line where it's like, why did they think this was going to be a good plan? Like, why did they think this was going to be feasible? Maybe over the offseason, they, obviously they had higher hopes for Montgomery. Maybe they thought that James White was actually going to be able to play before he retired. So maybe it just like all went wrong for them. But still, I don't know, relying on two rookies like this so heavily is very un-Bill Belichick-like, especially at the running back position.
Dangerous.
So plans for this podcast. As I said off the top, I've been wanting to do a podcast with you for a very long time. Hopefully that people enjoy this. We'll be doing this every Monday, every Friday. Personally, as people probably know, I got laid off by PFF on Friday. That was kind of unexpected. So we put this whole thing together very quickly. Shout out to Stone Rochelle, former PFF podcast producer who helped us with logos and all sorts of other stuff as well. And yeah, I think that this will be a fun endeavor. I hope that everyone subscribes on Apple and Spotify and YouTube and everything. But do you want to say anything in general about the podcast?
Well, I think if I was listening to this as someone who likes you and cares about you, I just want to know how you're doing. I was able to talk to you, but other people haven't. So how are you doing? I was shocked by the news. I think the outreach on Twitter, obviously, was pretty significant. Literally everyone in the world was like, Doug is amazing. Someone hire him immediately. So that might have felt good. But I mean, how are you doing since it's only been a week, not even since that happened?
I'm doing better. I've been surprised. So like every day this week, I've had meetings with, prospective people who want me to work with them in some way or another. So I'm doing a lot better now since there's options to weigh. On Friday when like no one's immediately just gonna be like, hey, you're hired. It was like, okay, this is really weird. I don't know what to do with myself right now. But I'm doing better, especially since, things are starting to come together. I don't know if I want to dive into something full-time right away again. So that's another thing that I have to consider, is that that's a possibility that I could just kind of wait until the off season and see what comes along then. I'm not necessarily in a rush to just like take the first thing that's offered to me. So we'll see how that all goes. But just about PFF in general, I would suggest people read an article that was posted on frontofficesports.com that talked a little bit about the layoffs, because I'm not sure how much like company wise I can get into what all happened, but there's a lot of very good people that work at that company. I love a lot of the people who work there. A lot of those people are the ones who did reach out to me and say any help that we can possibly give you will be great. So shout out to people like Brad Spielberger, who I used to do a podcast with, my editors, Ben Cooper, John Oning, and Mark Chichester. Those guys are great. Anthony Trash. I'm going to forget people, Trevor Sikkema, lots of really great people there, people who left that company as well. Good timing for them. Guys like Austin Gale and Eric Eager. Big shout out to them as well. But I would say that overall it was definitely very surprising that this happened, and you might be able to get all of the answers as to why it happened, like I mentioned in that frontofficesports.com article that AJ Perez wrote, that I was not permitted to talk to him about it.
I did read that article. I would say I didn't like what I found in that article. I found it a bit. This is me talking, not Doug. I didn't like what was going on there. Good article though. Well written, well reported. Just an unfortunate thing. I think you obviously in this industry of ours weren't the first person to get that news, and unfortunately won't be the last. I know that doesn't help in the moment with your personal situation, but just to know that it obviously had nothing to do with you or your work or your personality. I don't think. I mean, I've known you pretty well.
It's possible.
You
jerk.
might, there's a little thing here or there, but I don't think. I think that's certainly got to be a bad. So you were asking Bill Belichick questions at 1 a.m, and then that kind of threw me off. So I'm sure a lot of people were as well to see that.
Yeah, it was strange. And yeah, I will say that like when people immediately are like, "Oh, you'll get hired right away," all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, it feels good, but you're also just kind of like, "Well, do you know what industry we're in? Like,
where
like, do you know what time of year it is? Like, do you know that there's like a season going on right now?" And things have, like I said, things have gone well. There are offers on the table. I would say at this point, I just kind of have to decide what exactly I want to do with my life. But for now, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to do this
Hell
podcast.
Yeah.
I want to do this podcast with you, Michael F. Hurley. You've got
people can get in.
Seltzer. I've got a Taco Bell cup filled with an energy drink right now because.
Can we talk about the fact that
I might go to the gym?
I went to the gym earlier. Did you notice?
Yeah, I can notice. I noticed.
I did shoulders, back. It's no big deal. In the old days, like when a band would go like in a corporate commercial, like sellouts. Now every time Turnstile comes on in the Taco Bell commercial, I'm like dun 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 dun, dun. Like the Dirty Nil did like a Mercedes ad during the Masters a couple years ago. I'm like, hell yeah, guys! Like get that corporate money, let them use it for however long. This rocks. So it's made me want to go to Taco Bell. That's how effective it is. Like good use, though. If you can believe this, Doug. The Turnstile, the Taco Bell KFC in my town turned into just a KFC. And like
what?
Joe Biden has not weighed in on this. Congress has not weighed in on this. The UN has not weighed in on this. I don't know how you can just like, you can't just take a Taco Bell away. You can't. They put they blacked out the half of the sign.
So in the town that I live in, there's Taco Bell. I don't want to tell people where I live, but in the town that I live in, there's a Taco Bell. But I will also say that I grew up in Sharon, Massachusetts, and in Walpole, Massachusetts, there's a Taco Bell at the Walpole Mall that is always like one of the busiest Taco Bells I feel like in America. So busy, in fact, that they put one like down the street on Route 1 in like Norwood or something like that. So it seems unbelievable that they would take a Taco Bell away from you when there are 2 Taco Bells on Route 1 right up north of Foxborough within like a mile and a half of each other, it seems like.
It ain't right. The drive-through line was always like wrapped around the building. Guess what? It's not anymore because you don't have any cheesy gordita crunches to give to people. People are simple. We like simple things. Granted, I don't go too often, but again, the Turnstile commercial almost brought me back, but I can't go.
Do you do any like sports betting or anything like that?
I'm waiting till it's legal, Doug, which should be soon. I just feel like it'll be a little bit. I always doubt the payout situation. Easier. Yeah, like I doubt the payout situation on the shady random websites because of like in 2007 people weren't getting paid, which in my mind is relevant to 2022. But soon enough we'll be able to just sit on the couch, watch say like a Thursday night Rams Raiders game with perhaps Baker Mayfield playing after signing with the team 2 days prior and just go crazy with it. $5 bets all over the place. So soon enough.
Are you surprised that the Patriots are favored by 1.5 points in this game?
No, I thought about that too, because the Cardinals really do. They haven't competed well against anyone. And like you could take out individuals and be like, oh, JJ Watt and Isaiah Simmons and Kyler Murray and DeAndre, and it's just not working. But when I do that now, it's like, I don't know. People do this sometimes. Draft like the 10 best players in this game. The Cardinals have a bunch of them.
Right.
I don't know whether it's 6 or 7, but maybe 8. I don't know. We don't have to do it. But the point is they have the talent and might be a little frisky. I do a picks column every week to let other people gamble. And I actually picked the Cardinals and I wrote this big description, but then it just like, it didn't feel right. Cause I don't think we're ready. In the old days, if the Patriots lost on national TV, like God bless the next opponent, they were going to get blown out. The best game plans were coming. All these things were coming. Now I'm not sure that's the case. Now I can see the loss there, but I'm still not ready to officially close the door on that part of the Bill Belichick Patriots, where it's like when it gets bad, it goes from bad to worse.
Right.
So there's that chance, but I don't think it's like 90-10. It's like 60-40 maybe.
Yeah, no, it is, isn't it kind of weird to some degree that the Patriots are 6-6, that like they are at least record wise considerably better than a team like the Cardinals, like based on the way that we were talking about them today, as if like everything is terrible and everything is going wrong. Like
Yeah.
it's still like kind of amazing to me that they can be favored by a team um on the road this late in the season, everything like that. I don't know. I'm looking
Weren't
at
they
the
favored in Minnesota? I'm pretty sure they were favored in Minnesota too.
yeah, they
No.
might have been. I don't know. I'm looking at the betting market rankings for the NFL. This is on inpredictable.com. It's something that Ben Baldwin on Twitter always tweets out the power rankings. And based
Not
on
favored. Not favored in Minnesota, sorry.
okay, based on Inpredictable, and this is based on betting markets. This is based on how like what a team would be favored by. Let's see, what you would expect the team to be favored by against a league average opponent on a neutral field. Out of all 32 teams, where do you think the Patriots are ranked in this?
21st.
They are 11th. Isn't that kind of shocking?
Now is
They
that's based on betting markets though? Like
yeah.
I,
So
I
like
think there's certain teams like the Cowboys that are always going to get more bets, or is it just the like
right.
the point spreads, which I guess
It's
is tied into that.
point spreads, which is tied into that. But like, yeah, this is saying that the Patriots would be favored on a neutral field over every team other than the Bills, Chiefs, Cowboys, Eagles, Bengals, Dolphins, 49ers, Browns, Packers, and Buccaneers. So it's still very like quarterback centric since you've got Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in there. And
But
I
like
think
I
that
didn't hear Baltimore. I didn't hear Baltimore
right,
in there. They beat
yeah,
the Patriots at home. I
yeah,
didn't hear
that's
Cincinnati
shocking.
in there. We'll see how that goes. Like I'll give you like the Chargers and the Raiders
Oh,
and
you know why the Ravens are 22nd because Lamar's hurt right now.
oh, so that
Um,
I mean if
so that favors
yeah.
into it. That factors into it as
I
well.
would like them with Huntley over the Patriots, to be honest with you.
I
But
would certainly consider it as well.
yeah. One thing about the Patriots that I find it like people might dismiss the Jets wins because Zach Wilson was so bad and all that. But the only thing standing between the Jets and a 9-3 record and a tie for first place, actually outright first place because they beat the Bills, is
Yeah.
those those two losses
Right.
to the Patriots.
Yeah.
Which if nothing else this year is like an accomplishment for this team because I think the Jets are really good talent wise.
Yeah.
I think maybe Robert Saleh runs a little bit hot when he plays Bill Belichick, really wants to beat him, kind of like McDermott did in his first couple years in the AFC East. But like those are, I count those as real wins for the Patriots when you're talking about
Yeah.
how they stack up against, you know, the meat of the league. But then you look at the Miami loss, the Baltimore loss,
Yeah.
and then the Chicago loss was kind of out
Chicago
of
loss
left
was
field.
bad. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like them against what's 32 minus 11. That's way too much math. 20 teams in there because you got to subtract the Patriots.
21. Yeah. 20 teams.
I don't love them against 20 teams. Maybe
I agree.
limit that by like 4 or 5.
We're going to go after I ask you this one last question. And that is, would you think anything different of the Patriots right now if the pass that Mac Jones threw to Jacoby Myers, where he got his head taken off, had been a touchdown
No.
instead of dropped due to the fact that he was nearly decapitated?
No, because again, I go back to the Bills' philosophy that night. It wasn't to score a ton of points. It wasn't to really like make a point. It was just to get out with a W, which though considering they were coming off a near loss in Detroit on Thanksgiving, I think was a smart strategy. They had the snowstorm. They had to go to Detroit. They had to go home. They had to go back to Detroit. It was a hell of a 3 weeks. I think they were like, simplify it. Like their goal on offense was to possess the ball for 6 minutes. If they scored, they scored. But it was to take time off the clock. And they knew like the Patriots weren't scoring. So that drive at the end, if you score when you're down, it was 17 points at that point. I would qualify that as a garbage time touchdown. I would like to see Mac throw it better. His arm didn't look particularly strong on that night. The pick that should have been to Poyer being maybe the biggest example, but overall, no, I would have put that one in the garbage time bin.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that I'm looking it up right now. I think that my former employer like called that a big time throw by Mac Jones, which I was a little bit surprised by just because it was like a hospital ball too.
Yeah.
It was like he fit it into a tight window, So that in itself, like, yeah, that was a big time throw. But I'm not saying I disagree with it being one. I was just maybe slightly surprised when I did see the stats posted that he had a big time throw. Then I went back and looked at it. I was like, oh, okay, it was that one. That's interesting, because clearly there weren't many big time throws in that game, since he was throwing like 1 yard past the line of scrimmage for 95% of it. Okay, I lied to you. One more question.
Okay.
And then we're actually going to go. After they had success throwing the screen to Marcus Jones, why not just do it again? Like, why not do that more than
Well,
once?
they gave it to him one more time.
Yeah.
I think the element of surprise was big there.
It is, but still.
Yeah, if you watch, there was an edge player sort of lined up on him in the slot who kind of crept in and blitzed or rushed the quarterback, which left him. Because if you watch that play, Doug, nobody executed a block on that side of the field.
It's true, yeah.
Like, I think it was Parker was out there trying to block the safety coming in. He was the closest defender.
Yeah.
Did not get a block on him. Whoever was it, Trent Brown was. There was no blocks. There was not a block executed on that play. And there was a point where Marcus Jones, to your point, was standing there with 5 Bills in like an orb around him, and he outran them all and went.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that it was his first snap on offense, probably if you're on defense, you're probably like, well, I don't know, someone must have gotten hurt and this guy's in. And it's not like, but then the next time he came in, obviously there were some keys. Yeah. Who's number 25? Speaking of which, you're a big numbers guy. 2 questions for you before we go. Baker Mayfield, number 17. What do we think about that?
He's too short. Number 17, I believe, is a tall quarterback's number. It looks great on Josh Allen. I will say, though, Dave Craig, the Seahawks quarterback when I was growing up in Seattle, was number 17. He was also a shorter quarterback, but I think like Baker's like too thick to be wearing. He's too short and thick to be wearing number 17. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, he's set up to fail.
It looks weird on him. Yeah.
And next, as it relates to this week's game, the Arizona Cardinals linebacker Zaven Collins, number 25. You saw him score a defensive touchdown against the Seahawks, and it was like, oh, a cornerback or a safety has it, and it's like, wait, that was Zaven Collins. I don't know about 25 in the line. Like, I'll give you a single digit, but 25 seems a little bit off.
I also like, even when I play, I still sometimes play NCAA football. I would like put linebackers in like numbers in the 30s, numbers in the 40s. 25, no. But the thing that pisses me off the most is defensive backs wearing numbers in the teens. No offense, Jack Jones. I think you're a great player. You've got a bright future in the NFL. I don't like you wearing number 13. It looks bad. Cornerbacks in single digits, cool. Cornerbacks 20s, 30s, cool. That cornerback on the Bills who wears number 47, very cool. I like how, like, you're almost trolling at that point to be wearing number 47. Numbers in the teens, though, not good.
Otis Smith rocked 45 in the early dynasty days. Like, that's a good number. 25 at linebacker is not working, but I don't know. It worked on that play. So
I was convinced after that play that Marcus Jones could be the next Tyreek Hill if they just switch him over to offense full time. We'll see how that goes for the Patriots.
He's kind of slight. He's a little slight. You don't want him getting hit too much. Like, he's a punt returner.
Yeah. We lied to you earlier. We will be back. Well, we'll be back like very late Monday night for a recap podcast about this game that we've talked about ad nauseum at this point. We'll be recording that show after the Patriots-Cardinals game. I don't know where I'll be recording because the next wall over is my daughter's room and I don't want to wake them up. But we will be back with you guys then. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, this was fun.